Let's jump right into this explainer and decode the actual engine of real estate, the financial metrics. Today, we're traveling down what I like to call the income funnel. We're going to start at the very top with gross rent and then systematically carve that down to the ultimate bottom line, your actual return on investment. Here's our roadmap. We've got finding effective gross income, net operating income, calculating real cash flow, investment value and cap rates, and finally, return on investment. All right, section 1, finding effective gross income, or EGI. So we always start at the absolute top of the funnel, right? Looking at the theoretical maximum a building could possibly make. But let's be real, we don't live in a perfect world. That's exactly why EGI is your realistic starting point. It accounts for the simple fact that, well, not every single square foot is going to be occupied year-round, and honestly, not every tenant pays on time. It basically takes that maximum potential rent and grounds it right back in reality.
You can think of it like a waterfall, where money flows in, but attrition totally happens before we even pay a single utility bill. So you start with the gross rent, you add in expense reimbursements, like say when commercial tenants pay back a portion of their taxes, then, and this is absolutely crucial, subtract your vacancy and credit loss. Finally, you toss in miscellaneous income, things like late fees or even the quarters from the laundry machines. That gets you to your true EGI.
Let's actually ground this in a real example. Imagine you've got a 150,000 square foot building and you're charging $20 a foot. In a perfect world, that's a solid $3 million gross. But if we project a standard 5% vacancy rate, we lose $150,000 right off the top. So our EGI, the actual cash we honestly expect to handle, comes out to a very real $2.85 million. Moving on to section 2, net operating income, commonly known as NOI. Okay, so we have our effective gross income, but are we rich yet? Well, not quite, because we still got to keep the lights on, right? And that brings us to NOI, which is arguably the most crucial heartbeat metric of any property. It literally shows you the building's true operational efficiency, completely independent of how it happens to be financed.
Now, it is absolutely vital to remember that to find NOI, we only subtract regular operating expenses. We're talking everyday recurring costs, utilities, snow removal, property taxes, that sort of thing. We explicitly do not subtract capital expenditures. Those are your massive, infrequent improvements, like slapping a brand new roof on the place. Those are handled totally differently, and they don't touch our NOI calculation at all.
What's really fascinating here is how we analyze those operating expenses. Calculating the cost per square foot is literally the ultimate way to compare the efficiency of completely different sized buildings side by side. Take building A at 75,000 square feet and building B at 200,000 square feet. Building B actually costs less to run per square foot, $4.28 compared to $4.80. So this proves building B is managed far more efficiently, despite being a massive complex. Let's track an apartment building's income as it drips down past those vacancies and expenses. Say we have a mix of units generating a gross potential of $208,800. But the manager forecasts that one studio is going to sit vacant for 6 months, which costs us $6,000. That leaves a net effective run of $202,800. And then we got to subtract $125,000 for all those operating expenses we just talked about. And we are left with a very satisfying final net operating income of $77,800 for the year. This number right here, this is the property's pure operational profit. All right, on to section 3, calculating real cash flow. So we have our NOI, which is great, but unless you bought the entire building in cash, we still have to pay the piper. Yep, the mortgage lender. And this is exactly where we arrive at cash flow. It's the money that actually finally hits the owner's personal bank account after covering all operations and, critically, after paying the debt service, which includes both your mortgage interest and the principal. When we zoom out to the macroscopic income funnel equation, the entire journey just becomes so clear. It starts from gross rent, up at the very top, absorbing those reimbursements, shedding the vacancies, to finding our effective gross income. Then we strip away operating expenses to find the heartbeat, our NOI. And finally, we carve out that debt service to reveal the ultimate prize at the bottom, your cash flow. Let's actually apply this exact waterfall to a 100,000 square foot shopping center and run the numbers. We start with a cool $2.5 million gross. We lose 10% of vacancy, leaving an EGI of $2.25 million. Now subtract a hefty $500,000 in operating expenses, and we get an NOI of $1.75 million. Finally, we deduct a pretty heavy monthly mortgage of $30,000, which is $360,000 a year. After all that attrition, the massive, tangible, final answer for this specific shopping center's actual take-home cash flow? A whopping $1.39 million. Not bad at all, right? Next up, Section 4, Investment Value and Cap Rates. So, how do we use all this income data we've been calculating to figure out what a building is actually worth on the open market? Enter the capitalization rate, or as we usually call it, the cap rate. Think of this as a magic number determined by the broader market. It factors in interest rates, the economy, location, the whole shebang. It allows investors to value an asset by simply taking that heartbeat metric, the net operating income, and dividing it by the cap rate. So, by dividing our shopping center's NOI of $1,975,000 by a market cap rate of 8%, or 0.08, we can essentially reverse engineer its true market value. Doing that specific math values the asset at nearly $25 million. And here is an absolute game changer of a takeaway. Because value is tied directly to NOI, saving money on expenses creates massive swings in your total value. If a manager saves just $10,000 a year in operating expenses on a building with a 10% cap rate, they instantly create $100,000 in additional property value for the owner. It's literally like printing money. Finally, Section 5, Return on Investment, or ROI. We've done all the hard work, but we still have to ask, was the juice actually worth the squeeze? This is where we calculate the return on investment. You simply divide your annual cash flow by your initial cash down payment. ROI is absolutely the ultimate comparative metric. It lets investors weigh completely different assets against each other, say a massive shopping center versus a small apartment building, to see exactly where their money is working the hardest. Let's pit two completely different assets against each other to see this in action. On one side, we've got a $5 million hotel requiring a $1 million down payment, generating $90,000 in cash flow. That works out to a 9% ROI. On the other side, a $3.5 million medical office building requiring an $875,000 down payment, but generating $120,000 in cash flow. Doing the math, the medical building yields a 13.7% return, winning handily over the hotel. It takes way less cash up front and actually provides more cash flow. This brings our journey down the income funnel to a close, but it definitely leaves us with one final crucial question. What hidden financial value can you unlock in your next property analysis by meticulously applying these exact formulas?